Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. A bit of drama emerging in roster mania last night with Los Angeles Thieves forming their roster for the upcoming season. Parasite has given his thoughts that he doesn't reckon this team is going to be particularly good at all, and he could build a better team apparently in his sleep than JKap and co have managed to put together here. JKap responds and says that Parasite effectively is saying this for no good reason. Some have said that JKap's salty about this. Does Parasite just have no real idea what he's talking about? Lots of drama going on. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Of course, Ian Crim's exporter, he's out there in Saudi Arabia right now. Probably this is already going down or concluded for the day, the FaZe team. So we'll keep an update on this just to see how Crim's getting on for this kind of final of the Rin Sports season. Whether he's anywhere near the pace, whether he could not finish last place would be a good achievement, I think, for Crim, all things considered. I wanted to mention this though as well on Zinni versus Scump, because it's been a big thing over the careers of these players that yes, they're boys for sure. They spent some time playing together, some time, well, most of the time playing apart, and played plenty of series against each other over Call of Duty history. But the joke is that Scump always has Zinni's number, right? And whenever they've played, Scump's always smoked him pretty much. And the numbers, it's got to say, do play that out. I can't believe that Free Dave Paddy on Reddit actually went through and did this. Very impressive stuff, no doubt. But I mean, yeah, fair play. Like, he went back to all the matches they'd played, so excluding 2Ks and 5Ks, only LAN or Pro League games in their entire career, and looked through the kill feeds to calculate every single kill and death that each player had against each other. So this isn't like series KD, this is KD against the other individual. So, I mean, this is absolutely incredible, and I know that Zinni's going to get toasted for this, but I mean, whatever, it's a stat, baby, like the numbers don't lie. So this is Black Ops 2, they played 2 series, and I think for one of the series it wasn't available, the numbers here. So the series count on the whole is 14-4 in Scump's favour, but the KD is like even more insane. So in the series they played in Black Ops 2, Scump had 25 kills against Methodz, and Methodz had 18 kills against Scump. So you see the respective KDs. Advanced Warfare was bad. Scump had a 2.5 KD against Zinni, and Zinni only had a 0.4 the other way. Even in World War II, which was Zinni's best game really, and Scump's probably worst ever, they were 1-1 in series count against each other that year, and still Scump had more kills than Zinni had. So you know, he had a 0.9, Scump had a 1.1 pretty much. Modern Warfare 2019 was dead even. The only game where Methodz has a positive KD, or at least an even KD against Scump, was that one. And then Modern Warfare 2 they played once, and yeah, obviously Scump got the better in that series, as we well know. And Cold War they played once, Vanguard they played a few times. But the overall numbers there then between Scump and Methodz, so in their entire careers, now of course both retired, Scump had 336 kills against Methodz and 252 deaths, and then swap those around for Zinni's situation. So Scump's all-time KD against Methodz was 1.33 and Methodz was 0.75. So incredible that, you know, they actually looked up, Free Dave Paddy actually looked up these numbers to find this out. Feel kind of bad for Methodz, but as I say, the numbers don't lie, and I thought you guys would find it rather entertaining. So maybe we can see more of this, right? I'd be interested to see, like, you know, Slasher and Formal or some other kind of presumed, you know, rivalry or his hard counter, something like this, just to see if the numbers add up elsewhere from what we believe might be the case. Definitely wanted to share this as well here on Huke. I thought this is an interesting set of statistics, that there's only been 2 players in the CDL that have played for 2 different teams in the same season 2 times over. Huke and Vivid both were actually on the Dallas team during the Cold War season, but they've both done this. They played for Dallas and Thieves. Huke did during Cold War, and then this year he also played for 2 teams, and Vivid did the same thing during Cold War and then Vanguard with Florida and Boston. So I don't know where Vivid's going to go next. The current rumor is the Minnesota Rocker might be looking to get his services. But what's the situation here with Huke? Because during the Scrap Time episode, Ben actually mentions the Huke situation, and Crowder says, well, Huke must have something planned because he hasn't really been leaked to any rosters yet. And Ben says, well, if it's the team that I think it is, that's I couldn't really tell what Ben's reaction is, whether he's trying to say, oh, that's going to be good, or whether he's saying like, oh, this is going to be bad. I'm more leaning towards the latter, to be honest.
Let me ask it to you this way, Chris. Can you see a world where Boston picks up some or one of the former sub players that have been on their roster, even going as far back as last year?
Maybe. I mean, like, it's weird, dude. Like, the whole Huke thing, I feel like Huke's got something figured out because he's not on any of these rumors rosters. And I feel like, with that being said, I think he's like, I feel like he's pretty particular with his teammates and stuff. So I think he's got something figured out. It's why I don't really even like include him in a lot of these conversations yet. But regardless,
if it's the team I think he's on, dude. Oof.
I don't even know that team we're talking about yet. But yeah, but
so what do you guys think the implication was there from Ben? My thinking is that he's probably saying like, he's going back to LAG or something. I don't know exactly if you guys agree with my assessment on that, but it feels like that might be the type of reaction because the only other option realistically is Boston to be their fourth, which would be pretty good. And I don't think that maybe Ben would say that if he was going to Boston, which should be his best option remaining on the table. So maybe he's going to be stuck back on Los Angeles Gunners again. That would be a bit of an oof, wouldn't it? Let's be honest. That would be tough for Huke if that was to be the case. But let's talk about some rosters for next year. And there's been 2 big leaks that have come out over the last several days. Mainly the Minnesota Rocker we talked about yesterday, but also a couple of days before that, the Los Angeles Thieves. These are the 2 rosters that we have as a recording, no official confirmation on, but yet we are pretty confident are going to be the case over the coming days. Ghosty, Cammy, Afro, JoeDeceives is the team from Thieves, and then the Minnesota Rocker team apparently awakening Accuracy, Vivid Lens. And I said yesterday, I'm not really sure which of these teams should be better. It's difficult to say. In my perspective, this Thieves roster should have higher upsides, but I'm a little bit more concerned that this team will blow it up in a shorter period of time than we might see with that Minnesota Rocker team. So there's been, this massive thread developed here over the last 24 hours with regard to these rosters. And it comes from Parasite initially. So Studio Oscar Intel says, people are hating on these rosters, but what do you want them to do? There's not that much left on the table. Parasite says, though, I could build better teams in my sleep. So pretty much just calling out the people that built these rosters. And what is very interesting is that JKap then replies, who was presumably involved in building this roster, which has not yet been confirmed. But, would JKap be, if this team was not true, would JKap be wading in to give his perspective here to Parasite? Maybe not, right? You can look at it both ways. And things could certainly change. But I think part of this is that Parasite has been, he wants to be a coach for some team, wants to be a general manager or do something like that. And I think this is probably part of Parasite saying, look, I could do a better job than these guys, and JKap saying, well, no, you couldn't, and we'll see that in a second. But it's difficult for Parasite, because if you're in his position, I'm sure he wants to be able to prove that he can build better rosters. But it's like a catch-22, because if no CDL team gives him the role as a head coach or as a general manager or something, then he can't necessarily prove that he actually can build good rosters. So, it's kind of a bit of a difficult one, right? And then, teams would probably want him to prove that he could before they'd sign him. And we've known that Nadeshot in the past, I think, has said a couple of years ago now that Parasite, based on his past and, just being a difficult person to work with throughout his career, maybe that's not the case nowadays, but you guys can give your thoughts on that. Nadeshot said, look, we're not going near Parasite, like, that's not happening, we're not going to sign him, I think is what he said in the past. And, so I'm sure Parasite doesn't mind too much beefing with Los Angeles Thieves, because I'm pretty sure they weren't going to get him anyway. But maybe Parasite, does he need to be talking to Rocker, potentially employer, right? Do you know what I mean? But still, we're going to dive into it today. So Ronnie says, ceiling-wise, you definitely couldn't when it comes to Thieves. Outside of Joe, all of those players have shown they can be elite. Parasite says this is 2023, and it will be 2024, which kind of implies, I think what he's probably saying here is that Cammy just isn't it in 2023 anymore, which maybe is fair play. And I know that I think, to me, there's a lot of recency bias going around about Afro. People are saying Afro isn't very good, but, I think that's recency bias personally. I think that Afro does have the highest ceiling of all the SMGs that are remaining on the market as it presently stands. But if we scroll further down, we get JKap wading in. And as I say, would JKap be coming in here if this team wasn't actually true? Maybe not. And he doesn't respond to the claims straight up, but he says, if this is your logic, why were you competing as recently as last year? So kind of just like roasting his ability, I guess, in the present year. Content bro. So of course Parasite tried to come back. He played some tournaments, played some challenges, stuff like this, just for content, just, to enjoy it. Don't care about going pro. It's good stream content because there's no ranked ins. They talk a little bit about back and forth about why he was competing and stuff. But really what's interesting, as far as I'm concerned, is the comment on the roster itself. So, bit of beef, bit of back and forth. Even Doug wades into the discussion here and says that I have to side with Chris here, talking about challenges. Challenges needs a lot of work. The way players are ranked needs a lot of work. The comparisons between NA and EU, like balancing the dynamics, need to change. And he says, look, I'm not discussing anything about the LA Thieves Minnesota rumored roster, but, I agree with Parasite's perspective on this other thing. I just think challenges feels hopeless for many who deserve those promotions. It was the topic that we discussed the other day. And then Parasite comes back. I think Cap is just looking for a way to insult me or somehow discredit my argument here because he didn't like like it. So, because in fairness, Cap doesn't address, because Cap isn't going to come out and say, oh no, this roster is actually good, because then he'd be just saying that, oh yeah, that is the roster we're forming that's not yet been confirmed. So maybe Cap's way to get back at Parasite is to kind of roast his, ability or why he was competing recently to try and discredit his argument in some sense. I'm sure Cap actually does understand the semantics of Path to Pro. It's not the best, but it's been better than it has been pre-CDL in my opinion. Doug, of course, goes on to reply to this as well, but then we get a reply from JKap, where he says, I'm not trying to randomly insult you or discredit you. I just pointed out a flaw in your logic about that 2023 comment. That's literally it, and now Doug's in here talking about Path to Pro semantics when it's actually probably better now than it was pre-CDL. Doug just wanted to get a word in. Doug is the GOAT. I'm not pressed either way. I've got thick skin. Just know I'll be playing again next year if the only stream content there is pubs. Not trying to go pro, by the way, just having fun. And then we get, further replies. So Connor comes here and says he is just butthurt, saying to JKap that you don't like his roster. Chances are you could still build a good team too if you were a manager. And then JKap saying, I pointed out this logical flaw with this it's 2023 comment, but sure, I'm just salty. And Parasite explains it a bit more and says, look, my 2023 comment is simply saying that we should look at recent performances and realities and not bank on everyone simply returning to form. It rarely happens these days. So, pretty, as I said with Cammy, maybe he talks about this with Afro as well because, and JoeDeceives is the other player linked and it's, he's only got 2023 to go off. Right? We haven't seen anything from him in another season. Same with Ghosty. So he's obviously talking about, Cammy and Afro and, maybe Cammy more so than Afro because Afro was good at the start of the season. Cammy's been a bit underwhelming for a couple of years. And I kind of am inclined to, as much as I like Cammy, I'm inclined to agree with Parasite that if there was a player in that team that I would look to potentially upgrade on if I was building that roster, Cammy would be the one that I'm less sure of. But, could Parasite build a better roster than that in his sleep? I'm not so convinced. If he had infinite money and he could poach any player from any top team, then yeah, sure. But of the players currently on the market, I'm not sure that he could. I think the Thieves have done a pretty good job here. And I think the Minnesota have done a pretty good job, to be honest, with what I'm seeing so far. But people rarely return to form. Not to say those players don't deserve spots. I was also saying I don't like the mix of players, not necessarily the individuals. So he doesn't reckon that they're going to work well as as a team. And I also kind of see that, I'm generally not convinced that Ghosty and Cammy are going to work in the long term, especially medium longer term. Give it 6 months. I'm not sure how that's going to be. So I actually kind of see what Parasite's saying on this. At least that's my interpretation of it. But the question is, does this need to be said? Does he need to be saying, oh, JKap and, the guys Looney, let's say, and Rocker, they've got no idea what they're doing. I could build better rosters in my sleeve. Is that the best way to get a job in the league? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Intrigued to your thoughts on it. But that's pretty much where the drama and the beef on that one ends. There is a little bit more actually here that I found. So Parasite says, I didn't call anyone on those teams trash. I just don't like the mix together. And maybe you're saying the same thing about Minnesota Rocker, the accuracy, the awakening thing, and, Lynn's coming in with Vivid. It is a bit strange. It is a bit risky, but I think you've got to take some risk down there because Parasite, what would he do if he was building a team? Would he get a team of 4 from challengers? I don't think he would, but he said before that he would look down that direction to sign guys that have, played together in challenges. And if you do that, sure, you might get a functional roster, maybe even more functional than these teams we're seeing with Thieves and Minnesota Rocker, but they won't probably have the same ceiling as what they're trying to achieve with these rosters. So, it's a risk-reward thing, I think, that the teams have to consider here, and this is what we know so far, those 2 rumoured teams that we mentioned. I think there are other options, and I'm sure Parasite would have his own perspective on what they should do instead. I still think that maybe aBeZy instead of, Cammy could be an interesting option, but plenty of time for us to see how this is going to go and what might potentially change over time. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.